Michael Jackson's life is one of the greatest motivational success stories the world has ever witnessed. A tale of a little boy born into struggle, carrying nothing but his dreams and voice, who went on to break every barrier and become the king of pop, a name that will live forever in history. To understand his journey, you must first imagine the challenges he faced as a child. Born in Gary, Indiana, in a small, cramped home with 9 siblings, where money was scarce and life was tough, Michael had no privilege, no luxury, and no clear path to greatness, but he had a spark inside him, a spark that would eventually set the world on fire. He wasn't born into fame, he was born into hardship, but instead of letting his environment define him, he used it as fuel, proof that greatness doesn't depend on where you start, but on how far you are willing to push yourself to go. His father, Joseph Jackson, a strict and demanding man, believed in discipline, and though his methods were harsh, it was through those endless rehearsals and strict routines that Michael and his brothers learned to turn raw talent into polished performance. And even as a small boy, Michael's voice stood out like magic, powerful, soulful, and unforgettable. By the age of 6, he was already stealing the spotlight in the Jackson 5, captivating audiences with a presence far beyond his years, and soon it became clear to everyone around him that he was not just another child performer. He was destined for something far greater. Imagine a young boy, barely tall enough to hold a microphone properly, commanding stages, dazzling crowds, and leaving record executives speechless, because talent like his could not be ignored. This was the beginning of a journey that would not only change his life, but also transform the entire music industry forever. Michael's rise was not accidental. It was the result of relentless hard work, resilience in the face of criticism, and a refusal to settle for anything less than perfection. Even as a child, while other kids were playing outside, Michael was rehearsing, recording, and chasing a dream that only he could see. His determination at such a young age reminds us that age is never a barrier to greatness, that when passion and discipline meet, even a child can change the world. The Jackson 5 became a sensation, topping charts with hits like I Want You Back and ABC, and young Michael, with his radiant energy and golden voice, became the shining star of the group, adored by millions. But Michael was not content with just being a part of a successful band. Deep down, he knew he had more to give, a voice that could move the world, a style that could redefine music, and a vision that could create something the world had never seen before. That hunger, that fire, is what separates legends from dreamers, and Michael Jackson carried it with him every single day. Michael's decision to step beyond the shadow of the Jackson 5 was not an easy one. He had already become a household name, already admired for his stage presence, but Michael was not built to stay within boundaries. He was meant to break them. As he grew older, he started envisioning a solo career, a future where his creativity, his music, and his voice would not just fit into an existing mold but create a brand new one. It is here that we see one of the greatest lessons from his life. Never allow yourself to stay comfortable when your potential is calling you to something greater. Comfort zones are safe, but greatness is never born in safety. It is forged in risk, in bold steps, in chasing a vision that others may not even understand yet. Michael began recording solo projects in the early 1970s, and though he was still young, his brilliance shined through. Songs like Ben, which told the touching story of a boy and his pet rat, displayed not just his vocal ability but his emotional depth, his ability to connect deeply with listeners in ways that were rare, especially for someone his age. But as the years went by, Michael knew he had to take things further, to refine his sound, to find his own identity beyond the Jackson 5. The turning point came when he collaborated with the legendary producer Quincy Jones. That partnership was electric, a meeting of minds that would go on to change the history of music. With Quincy, Michael released Off the Wall in 1979, an album that blended pop, soul, and funk in a way that had never been done before. Critics praised it, fans adored it, and Michael Jackson was no longer just the lead singer of a famous family band. He was a force of his own. Songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You weren't just hits, they were anthems, and they established Michael as an innovator, an artist who was rewriting the rules of pop music. And yet, despite the album's massive success, Michael was not satisfied. That hunger inside him, the same hunger that had driven him since childhood, refused to let him rest. He didn't just want to succeed, he wanted to dominate, to create something so monumental that it would be remembered forever. That mindset, the relentless pursuit of something greater even after success, is what makes legends. Too often, people stop once they reach comfort, but Michael kept pushing, always asking, what's next? How can I be better? That drive led to Thriller in 1982, an album that would not only define his career but also redefine the entire music industry. Thriller was not just music. It was a phenomenon. From Billie Jean to Beat It to the iconic title track, every song carried something revolutionary. Michael fused rock, pop, and R&B, worked with legendary artists like Eddie Van Halen, and pushed boundaries in sound and style. But it wasn't just the music. It was the vision. Michael understood something that most artists overlook. Success is not just about talent, it's about creating an experience, a world that pulls people in. That's why his music videos weren't just videos. They were short films, cinematic masterpieces that combined storytelling, dance, and art. The Thriller music video, with its groundbreaking choreography and horror movie storyline, didn't just entertain. It changed the way the world viewed music videos forever. Michael Jackson was no longer just a star. He was the king of pop. And yet, even then, his story was not about comfort, but about courage. Because behind the fame and the fortune was still that same boy from Gary, Indiana, who carried scars, insecurities, and struggles. He faced criticism, rumors, and immense pressure, but what made him extraordinary was his ability to keep performing, to keep creating, and to keep inspiring despite the weight of the world on his shoulders. His story reminds us that greatness is not about living without challenges. It's about rising above them. When he performed the moonwalk for the first time in 1983, during a Motown 25 TV special, the world froze. In that single moment, Michael Jackson became more than an entertainer. He became a symbol of possibility, proof that magic could exist in real life. That move, so smooth, so impossible looking, became a cultural landmark, and even decades later, it remains one of the most iconic performances in music history. But behind that moment was hours upon hours of practice, of perfecting every detail, of refusing to accept good enough when greatness was possible. That is the essence of Michael Jackson's success story. Discipline, vision, and the belief that he could always push the boundary further. As the 1980s went on, Michael's influence spread beyond music. He became a fashion icon with his signature glove, his military-style jackets, and his fearless sense of style. He wasn't just setting trends, he was creating them. He taught the world that to stand out, you must dare to be different, to embrace your uniqueness fully. But perhaps his greatest contribution was the way his music carried messages of unity, love, and healing. Songs like We Are the World, which he co-wrote with Lionel Richie, and later tracks like Man in the Mirror and Heal the World, revealed a man who wasn't just chasing fame, but who genuinely wanted to use his gift to make the world a better place. Michael's rise to the title of King of Pop was not given to him. It was earned, through relentless work, vision, and the courage to dream bigger than anyone else dared to dream. His life teaches us that greatness is never about luck. It is about preparation, sacrifice, and the willingness to turn pain into purpose. Michael turned his childhood struggles into fire, his insecurities into fuel, and his passion into a legacy that will never die. As Michael's fame soared higher than ever in the mid-1980s, the world began to realize that he was not just an entertainer. He was a phenomenon, someone who had transcended the boundaries of music and entered the realm of legend. But with every step into greatness came even more challenges, the kind that would have broken ordinary people. Fame is heavy, and for Michael, it was both a blessing and a burden. Imagine living a life where every move you make, every word you say, every step you take is scrutinized by millions of people across the globe. The pressure was unimaginable, yet Michael carried it with grace, using his art as an outlet, a place where he could pour his emotions and turn his struggles into songs that inspired the world. In 1987, Michael released Bad, the highly anticipated follow-up to Thriller. Many doubted whether he could ever top the success of Thriller, but Michael didn't set out to top it. He set out to create something new, something daring, something that would prove his consistency as an artist. Bad was not just another album. It was Michael's declaration that he was not a one-time phenomenon, but a creative force who would dominate for decades. With hits like Smooth Criminal, The Way You Make Me Feel, and the title track Bad, the album cemented his status as the biggest star on earth. The music videos from this era were just as iconic, with Smooth Criminal introducing the world to the unforgettable anti-gravity lean, a move that defied logic and once again left audiences in awe. But beyond the music, Michael Jackson was teaching a greater lesson. When you achieve success, your journey doesn't end, it only begins. True success is not about one victory. It is about consistency, about showing up again and again, about proving that you are not just a star but a legend. Michael never allowed himself to rest on his laurels. He pushed boundaries with every album, every video, every performance. That is what makes his story so motivational. He showed us that greatness requires constant evolution. As the 1990s began, Michael's influence only grew. His album Dangerous introduced a new sound, blending pop with new jack swing, hip-hop, and world influences. Songs like Black or White carried powerful social messages about unity and equality, proving that Michael's music was not just entertainment, it was activism. He used his voice not just to sing, but to speak for justice, to promote love and compassion in a world divided by race, culture, and conflict. His performances became larger than life, with stadiums filled with fans from every corner of the globe, all united by his music. Imagine what that means. A boy who grew up in poverty, who once dreamed of escaping hardship, now standing before millions, not just as an artist, but as a symbol of hope. Yet behind the global stardom was still the man, Michael himself, who often felt lonely, misunderstood, and pressured by the weight of expectations. Here lies another great lesson in his story. Success does not erase struggle. No matter how high you climb, life will still test you. Michael faced criticism, legal battles, and media attacks, but he never stopped creating. He never stopped giving his best on stage. He never stopped believing that music could heal. That resilience, the ability to keep going when the world tries to tear you down, is the heart of his success story. In 1991, when Michael released the music video for Black or White, it was broadcast simultaneously in over 25 countries, reaching hundreds of millions of viewers, making it one of the most watched televised events in history. This was not just music anymore. This was cultural history in the making. He showed that when you follow your passion with relentless dedication, your voice can reach the entire world. Think about that. A boy who once sang in tiny clubs in Indiana now speaking to billions. That is the power of perseverance. His History album in 1995 was deeply personal, a reflection of his pain, struggles, and triumphs. Songs like Stranger in Moscow revealed his loneliness, while tracks like They Don't Care About Us showed his fearless stance against injustice. Michael was not just giving us music, he was giving us pieces of his soul. That's what made him unique, what made him legendary. He didn't just perform, he connected, he poured his truth into his art. But perhaps one of the most powerful aspects of Michael Jackson's story is not just what he achieved, but what he inspired in others. Generations of artists, from dancers to singers to performers of every kind, have been influenced by his creativity, his discipline, and his daring to be different. He showed the world that it's okay to be unique, that you should never apologize for being extraordinary, that you should chase your dream no matter how impossible it seems. Through the ups and downs, the fame and the controversies, the love and the criticism, Michael Jackson remained a symbol of excellence. He once said, "The greatest education in the world is watching the masters at work." And he himself became the master, the one whom millions studied, admired, and tried to emulate. His success story is proof that greatness comes at a cost, but it is a cost worth paying if it means leaving behind a legacy that inspires generations. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Michael was still filling stadiums, still creating, still breaking records. He had already become the most awarded artist in music history, already sold hundreds of millions of records, already become a global icon. But even then, his hunger for perfection never faded. That hunger, that fire, that refusal to settle, is what kept him on top for decades. And that, more than anything else, is why he remains the king of pop. Michael Jackson's story is not just about music, it's about transformation. It's about a boy who dared to dream, who turned pain into power, who turned hardship into history, who became a legend not because life was easy, but because he refused to give up. His story is a reminder to every dreamer. No matter where you come from, no matter what obstacles stand in your way, you too can rise, you too can inspire, you too can leave behind a legacy that will never be forgotten.